Hey friends, I'm Christy, and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast for women who are done playing small. If you've been shrinking to keep the peace or waiting for permission to want more, climb aboard because we are going to make some waves together. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you're never left stranded on the shore. And if you want a more connected experience, visit thrivewithchristy.com to learn more about the Thrive Collective, a community that combines boat rocking energy with the grounding effects of yoga and breathwork with live calls and classes. Now on to the show. Rachel Skaff is the Senior Vice President of Sales at FedEx and a veteran of the tech industry with past leadership stints at Amazon Web Services, or AWS, and Intel. Known for her messy, magical, and spectacular career path, Rachel combines the technical mind of a computer scientist with the heart of a mentor. She is a passionate champion for STEM and a believer that an exceptional life only happens outside of your comfort zone. When she isn't scaling global organizations, she's exploring off-the-beaten-path destinations with her 6 children. We overlapped at PetSmart, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. She is a boat-rocking role model for me, for sure. Welcome to the show, Rachel. I am so happy to have you here today.
I am thrilled to be here as well, Christy. Thank you for the invite.
Of course, we connected on LinkedIn not too long ago, but discovered that we both worked at PetSmart for several years. I started seeing your content and your commitment to compassionate leadership and creating collaboration, and I knew that I needed to have you on the show. So I'm grateful to you for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. You know, my motto is do better, be better, and make better, no matter what it is that you're doing, whether it's your personal life or your professional life. Every single one of us got to where we're at in our careers by having someone reach out and give us a boost. And now it's time for me to do the exact same thing.
Great. Well, of course, it's called Rock the Damn Boat. And I was so quiet most of my career. And once I decided to really come out of my shell and learn from others like you, I was able to sort of take the bull by the horns. It's a lot of mentorship and leadership, and then also being willing to step out of our comfort zones, which I know is one of your specialties as well. Take us back to the beginning. So you are SVP of sales, but you started your career in engineering and IT. And what did that look like at the starting line of your career?
First of all, I love that you remember those PetSmart days. There's something really powerful about seeing leaders at all these different chapters in their careers, isn't it?
Yes.
If I look back at my starting line, it was a very different starting line than where I'm at right now, halfway through my marathon. And I feel like it's been a little bit more like an obstacle course. It's been messy, it's been magical, but really looking back, it's been incredibly formative. So if we think about how my career started, I really started as a civil and environmental engineer in heavy highway construction. So
Wow.
that's hard hats, that's job sites, and that's really learning quickly that execution in the field matters as much as the architecture and the design. And I'll tell you, early career experiences, I think, shape all of us. And for me, that experience gave me a deep respect for, first of all, working outside in 120-degree heat in Arizona. But it gave me a deep respect for the discipline and the resilience and the people that are actually building the world around us. I had the opportunity to actually be part of that, and it really grounded in me that there are so many different ways to continue to build the world around us. After withstanding the 120-degree plus heat in the middle of the summer, I started thinking there's got to be an easier way to automate this or just make it more efficient or more effective. And that kind of pivoted me from, civil engineering in building the world to building technology that enabled the people. And that was kind of the shift for me. And while it wasn't a super conventional move, it just made sense in my brain of, hey, how do you make better? How do you do better? How do you leave things better? And that's kind of how I shifted into IT. When you think about that, that's kind of been the through line for me in every chapter of my career. It's that bias for solving really hard problems and building teams that can do it better than any one individual could do it alone.
Yeah, that is incredible. My dad was a manufacturing engineer before he retired. And so every once in a while, I'll say, oh, that's my engineer brain at work. But for you to have used that drive to create things that are better systems for people, I can understand the inner workings of that. I love that you lead with better because I will get into that collaboration and that style of leadership. But like you said, you built teams that, you sometimes have to enlist the help of people smarter than you. You have really created this trajectory in your career. You've led with heart. I hear that absolutely. But what were your ambitions personally for your career?
So it's an interesting question, Christy, because for me, it was never really about the title. And I tell my team all the time, a title doesn't make you a leader. So for me, ambition wasn't like something that was labeled or something that was polished. For me, ambition was much quieter and in many ways more powerful. It looked like curiosity in action. And whether I was on a construction site or stepping into technology roles, I wasn't challenging the system just for the sake of it, was really stepping in to try to understand it and then make it better, right? I was the person that was always asking, well, why does it work this way? And frankly, more importantly, is there a simpler or smarter way to do it? Or if we were starting from scratch, would we design it this exact same way? So that instinct to question and reimagine outcomes kind of has been a constant from day one. And I credit a lot of that to my background. Um, just as a side note, I grew up in a very, very small town in southern Colorado on a cattle ranch. And
Wow.
you constantly have to be innovative. You constantly have to pivot. You constantly have to question, well, hey, can I do this better? So the truth of it from an ambition perspective is I don't think that the inflection points of my career have ever come from a master plan. They came from they came from saying yes before I felt ready. And it came from saying yes to roles that extended me way beyond my experience and really figuring out, okay, how do I learn fast? How do I have that same impact regardless of which industry that I've had the opportunity to be part of? When you're willing to step into spaces where you're not the expert, or you're willing to step into spaces and say, how do I surround myself with a group of people who are always going to be more brilliant than I am? You get the opportunity to grow faster than the role actually requires. I didn't wake up thinking, hey, I'm going to be super ambitious and I'm going to go make waves. But I did wake up and I still do wake up every single day willing to ask better questions and willing to challenge what doesn't make sense and take risks on myself. For me, it's really just about this compound effect of people first, curiosity, courage, and bias for action. And it turns into something amazing when you bring people along on that journey and you trust that you'll figure it out.
You mentioned the word curiosity, and that was the word running through my mind the whole time you were describing how your career looked and always being inquisitive on the next thing. And I think that really gives my listeners, at least the ones who are afraid to come out of their shell or afraid to test their comfort zones, hope. Because what I'm hearing from you is you followed that curiosity. It was never about, oh, I need to rise to the top. Because I think that women like me who have maybe played it small throughout their lives, you just take the next step, the next step, the next step, and eventually you find yourself with a much larger comfort zone than you ever thought possible. That's a beautiful answer because it allows us to just make these decisions, follow those threads of curiosity, and end up where we end up because we know we're doing the right thing. I've been sober a little bit over 8 years, and when I got sober, it unlocked this whole new awareness and amazement with the world for me, and so I'm kind of the same way. I pick a destination, something I wanna try, and then I just try it, and if it doesn't work out, at least I tried.
Interesting tidbit. My dad always says, you didn't come this far to only be this far. And I think that's a perfect summarization of what you just talked about and what I just talked about. There's always more to go, right? What
Yes.
somebody's vision of reaching the top is, it's different for all of us. And by the way, just like hiking in Arizona, once you get to the top of the mountain and you look out, there's always another top. So just keep looking and keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely. It's funny, I'm in Texas now, but I have my little nods to Arizona on the back wall here
I
because it
see
was
it.
definitely a special place for me too. You have moved into a sales leadership role. You talked about the other career pivots. How did you end up here and with such a massive global presence of FedEx?
As you can see, my career hasn't been shaped by a single defining decision. And I think even if we're not talking professionally, we talk about it personally, right? Your personal life isn't shaped by a single defining decision. It's shaped by a series of intentional pivots. I think this is applicable not just to whatever career moment that you're at, but where you're at in your personal life too, right? It's not a shift in function, it's a shift in perspective. And when you look at it that way, the shift for me in that perspective was how do you translate that technical depth and that engineering depth into business outcomes that matter, right? How do you think about growth? How do you think about transformation? And how do you think about what do your customers need and expect at scale? So for me, it's really that common thread to how do you say yes to opportunities that you're not fully ready for, um, but really think about how do you shift that perspective. One of the most pivotal realizations for me was that your impact is not confined to your expertise. It's amplified by your ability to connect vision to execution. So it's that vision to execution piece. And for me, the ultimate aha was holy smokes, sales is the natural extension of understanding really complex problems, aligning teams, and always putting the customer first to move that business forward. It wasn't about leaving engineering and technology behind. It was about building on all of these chapters and continuing to widen the aperture of where and how I could make a difference. And there are so many common threads across each of the different companies that I've had the opportunity to work for. Again, not a change in function, just a change in perspective.
Yes, that makes so much sense to me because I spent the first part of my career as a buyer and I was the decision maker and I got to choose these things and to service the end customer. And then moving to the sales side of the table, I have this unique understanding of what it means to be on the other side. So I love that you have taken all of those valuable experiences and always looked at how you can grow and step and use that experience. I would say we leave little breadcrumbs for ourselves. And so you might come back and realize, wow, that experience shaped me more than I thought it would. Well, you have run billions in sales from a technical background. And what is an underrated skill that helped you? I hear curiosity, so that may be the big winner here. But what do you think that from a skill that you've worked to develop to utilize every day?
I think it's a really thoughtful question. I think the most underrated skill that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is the ability to listen, right? The ability to truly listen to what the other person is saying, what your customer is saying, what your teammates are saying, what your kids are saying, right? What your parents are saying, what your friends are saying, right? But you've got to listen, got to be present, and you've got to really figure out, how do I understand what really matters to Christy? What really matters to your listeners? What really matters to your customers, to your leaders, to the board of directors? That skill is has really been the foundation for me. And I think coming from, a technical background, coming from, a small town and a cattle ranch, all of those things, I've learned early on how to translate that complexity into clarity, right? I think at scale, success isn't about doing more. It's about focusing on what matters most and executing that with precision. And it might be something at work, and it might be something at home when your child needs help with a science project that they pop on you the night before, right? You have to figure out what matters most and how do you truly be present and listen.
That is an incredible skill to bring up because I know most recently when I was leading a team, they would say that's the thing that they have a hardest time with. And as a podcaster, I have learned to radically listen because I'm certainly want to be engaged in the conversation. So it has maybe given me a little bit of a leg up in terms of honing that skill. But I think it's wonderful to stop and think about that, especially right now when there's no shortage of content. We can get on social media or the news or whatever and get snippets of 1,000 things a minute. Just curious, maybe to add on to that, how do you put that into practice? How do you, Rachel, put that into practice? Maybe in meetings or with your kids?
For me, and you talked about all of the noise that is out there. And not all moments are created equal. And I think you're going to have times during your workday, or you're going to have times during your life where, I have to be present for my child, for my parent, for my friend in this moment, and turn off everything else. That's how you listen. It's not easy, right? You can sit here and say it, and I've got two phones that I'm sure are pinging, but right now this is what is important. And being present, people know when you're present. They do. They can feel when you're present. Think about all of the leaders or all of the people that you've had the opportunity to interact with. The people that you are attracted to are the people who listen and really want to know, Christy, what matters to you? What's important to you? They ask a lot of questions. They don't always have the answers, but they're super curious and they want to listen and they want to process.
You definitely have to practice. I'm really tuning into my intuition now and trying to listen to, what's coming next for my career. Speaking of leadership, we talked about all the distractions. So, what does steady leadership look like when you're under pressure?
I want to talk about what great leadership looks like under pressure. Because
Sure.
I think great leadership is different. I think leadership is stepping in to change the direction. It's about creating the right behaviors and the right belief. Steady leadership under pressure, it creates alignment during uncertainty. I think it provides teams confidence under pressure. And lastly, it provides this level of stability during change. And, you think about all the leaders that we've had the opportunity to work with, and some of the greatest leaders, they're not perfect, Christy, but what they are is they are consistent. The leader that you get under pressure is the same leader that you get
Mm,
when things are going well. It's the same leader that you get when things aren't going well. It's that it's that consistency, right? They don't overreact to spikes. They are able to separate signal versus noise. And again, I think they create this psychological safety of being predictable in tone and response. It doesn't matter if it's good news or bad news. For me, it's just news. And for me, it looks like in a miss or in a crisis of, okay, what are the facts? What matters in the next 72 hours? How can I help? It's not about, well, who did this or whose fault it was. It's really about that consistency of keeping the main thing, even when everything feels urgent. The leaders that continue to be successful are the leaders that just show up every single day. And they show up every single day just trying to be a little bit better every single day. And for me, that's what great, steady leadership is. It's the same principles, the same expectations, the same composure, and it lets teams execute it at a high speed without them worrying about emotional cycles on the leader's variability.
yes, because when you say consistency, my mind immediately goes to leaders where the stress has come out sideways. So I appreciate what you're saying because I can certainly think of examples where it was not consistent. And then you can tell, and that definitely feeds the whole team.
It does, right? You set the tone, right? Whether, again, you set the tone, whether it's for your team, you set the tone when you show up in a room with your friends, you set the tone when you show up in a room with your family. You've got to be very thoughtful about how you do this.
Yes. And someone like me who maybe more on the sensitive side, I definitely pick up on that when someone is upset or angry, and it can feel very personal when it might
It
not be.
can. It
But yes,
can.
that happens in friendships and relationships at work.
It
You
does.
mentioned psychological safety, which I loved that phrase because it is so important. And I feel like it's becoming more and more important to younger generations to feel very regulated, very safe. Have a firm commitment to mentorship. And what does that look like to support younger people, and especially as they're developing self confidence in their career?
I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you to visualize your first day on the job as your earlier self. And you think about that day and you think about, the trajectory that started after that. And where you've been able to get has really come down to a few what I would consider very human things. And I'm specifically using the word human because of how much AI is out there. But from a next generation perspective, it's about the humans. And so for me, it is about betting on people early and often, right? Like we just talked about my career. So I've seen firsthand that the biggest breakthroughs don't always come from playing it safe. They come from leaders who are willing to take bets on talent and on potential. And a lot of times, Christy, these people don't see it in themselves yet. And that's where leaders, really great leaders, step in, right? We lend the belief to them until they're able to build it on their own. We have to create space for them to step in and not just observe, right? Not just sit on the sideline. Growth doesn't come from watching, it comes from doing. So whether that's through stretch roles or owning outcomes or being in the room when the decisions are made, you have to give people real opportunities to build confidence through action. We've talked about my whole motto of do better, make better, be better, but that's not just for me personally. I think that's also how you develop others, right? When people understand that their work has meaning and that they're building something bigger than just themselves, because you start to believe what's possible and you start to believe that, hey, if I could just be 1% better every single day or in every single thing that I'm doing, now you're building that confidence. And then lastly, I think this is really, really important, especially with, how much technology is coming at us. They talk about in AI, they talk about human in the middle a lot. I'm not going to talk about AI today, but I'm going to talk about human in the journey. I recently shared on LinkedIn that that my son reminded me not to miss the sunsets. Those moments aren't going to show up on your calendar, but they matter just as much. So the same is really true at work and when you're investing in the next generation, or frankly, even the generation that is, leaving the workforce. It doesn't matter which generation it is. People aren't just building careers, Christy. They're building lives. And if you want them to thrive, you have to see it, you have to listen to it, and you have to support all of it. Because at the end of the day, right, none of us are getting there alone. All of us have had someone who's reached out and helped us. Mentorship, belief, and opportunity start to compound. And when I go out to LinkedIn and I see some of these folks that have had the opportunity to see from right when they graduated from college to where they're at today, I see that they are changing the world. They are changing the company and the people's lives that they're part of. And right, it's not just about building the capability. You're building the confidence that's going to last beyond just a single role. So super passionate about this. It is absolutely a human thing.
I appreciate that perspective because, yes, we know AI is a huge piece of what we're doing today professionally, but we cannot forget about or risk those personal interactions, which is part of why I love doing this podcast so much because I get to have these amazing conversations. Now, you have covered so many things and given us so much wisdom. My audience is mostly people who might be afraid to step out of their comfort zone. And I talk to inspiring women like you to help them see what's possible. So, if someone were afraid to speak up, or maybe you have a shyer person on your team, what advice would you give to them to come out of their shell or, step into a little bit of that confidence?
So I'm going to tell you a story. I'll never forget this story. My kindergartner, who's no longer a kindergartner, but he came home from school one afternoon and he came home super frustrated because during class, they were coloring. He picked out his crayons. He was staying inside the lines. He was taking his time. He was trying to fit into what a kindergartner thought was a box. Meanwhile, this other kid ran to the front of the room. He grabbed a bunch of markers, the bold permanent markers that bleed through the paper onto the desk. What my son said to me that day was, you know, Mommy, I'm still using crayons. I think it's time for me to use markers. Can you buy me some? And this story really stuck with me because I think at some point in all of our lives, whether it's professional or personal, we've all felt that instinct to just use crayons. Just stay in the lines, soften the message, make the edges safe, make the delivery more palatable. But here's my advice, right? At some point, just go get the markers, right? Just get the markers. Markers they don't mean louder. They just mean clearer, right? They mean conviction. They mean that you're willing to point out a point of view when knowing it might not be perfect and it's bled through the paper onto the desk. Um, you also know that it's going to be challenged, but you have to trust that your perspective has value. And whether you're a kindergartner or you're, like you and you're gonna feel doubt. I still have doubt, but the shift here isn't about eliminating that doubt. It's about deciding that your voice matters more than your hesitation, right? Don't show up with crayons. Don't be careful and tentative and trying to get it exactly right. Just pick up the marker and trust. It's not about dominating the room, but the markers can contribute to a way that moves forward, right? None of us were invited to stay inside of the lines. None of us were. Regardless of where you're at in your career, we were invited to help redraw them. So pick up the markers.
Go get the markers. That's going to be the new slogan. I watched Fried Green Tomatoes not long ago, and she's Tawanda. I always think about that. But that is an amazing story, Rachel, and amazing advice for any of us who are, yes, very tied to coloring inside the lines. Oh, thank you for that wisdom.
Not mine. It was my 5-year-old son.
That's true. We learn from those innocent ones before they're shaped and programmed to feel these certain ways or feel that fear of speaking up. So I love it. This has been an incredible conversation, and I want to be mindful of your time. I always like to close the show by asking my guest who their boat rocking role model is.
Oh,
Besides your 5-year-old, because we already know he
besides
needed the
my
markers.
5-year-old,
So
I'm drawn to leaders who will challenge the current, but they're going to stay deeply committed to the crew. And when I think about my boat rocking model, the person that comes to mind always when people ask me this is Condoleezza Rice. If you remember, Condoleezza Rice was the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State. I think she now teaches at Stanford. But you think about, we just talked about crayons versus markers. Every decision that she had global consequences. But in everything that we saw, whether it was the media or, reading any material that she wrote or the books about her, she was very calm and she was very deliberate. She had high accountability. She had structured thinking. She was really focused on operating with mechanisms or almost from an engineering mindset in a very, very complex environment. I think about, holy smokes, how did she balance making these really tough decisions with diplomacy? She had to make and hold really hard lines when needed. She also had to build coalitions and alignment across competing interests. I don't think she was either hard or soft. I think she was situationally precise and consistent. And
yes,
for
yes.
me, right, that's what it's about when you're pulling teams together. It's that consistency.
Yes. And you mentioned that in leadership before, and almost makes me think of like a rowing crew. So you need that leader who's up there, and rocking the boat doesn't have to mean tumultuous. It could just be like
That's
we
right.
are moving and making waves. So yeah,
That's right.
great example. Rachel, this has been such a rewarding and positive conversation. I know people can find you on LinkedIn to get more of your wisdom and insight on your posts because I just love seeing them. I loved the story about the sunsets. Any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
I'll leave you with two things. One, start before you're ready. None of us are ready, whether it is ready for a new role at work, ready to step into a parenthood, move a parent to a different type of house. None of us are ready, but just start. And then lastly, to kind of tie it back together around rocking the boat, leadership isn't really about how forcefully you row. You use the rowing analogy. It's not about how you row. It's about how many people you inspire to row with you and how much they carry that forward and give back or pull forward to the next generation. So, right? Again, be better, do better, leave better.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here today, Rachel. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast produced and recorded by Christy Hughes. You can follow, subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, and your 5-star review goes a long way. Thank you so much for your support of the show.